In the year 2157, humanity thrived under the banner of the United Earth Federation. The scars of war, poverty, and petty divisions had long faded, replaced by an era of unprecedented peace, progress, and unity. Warp drives allowed humans to explore and colonize dozens of star systems. First contact with alien civilizations, while not always smooth, had expanded humanity's understanding of the cosmos. For the first time, mankind dared to dream of a bright future stretching endlessly before them. That future shattered on First Contact Day. The Galactic Empire arrived without warning, a juggernaut of conquest and oppression that made the worst human tyrannies seem tame. A fleet of mile-long warships, resplendent in gold and crimson, appeared at the edge of the Sol system. At the center loomed a behemoth-class dreadnought, the personal flagship of the Emperor himself. It dwarfed even humanity's mightiest vessels, its weapons bristling with menace. Admiral Kira Singh, commander of Earth's home fleet, hailed the intruders from the bridge of her battlecruiser. She kept her voice steady, despite the dread knotting her stomach. "Unknown vessels, this is Admiral Singh of the United Earth Federation. You have entered our sovereign territory. Identify yourselves and state your intentions." The view screen flickered, resolving into a nightmarish visage. A draconian, the reptilian rulers of the Empire. Cold yellow eyes stared out from a scaled face, crested by a crown of horns. When it spoke, its voice was a guttural rasp, thick with disdain. "I am High Lord Xeric of the Galactic Empire. Your pitiful federation is now a vassal state under the Emperor's divine rule. Surrender immediately or be destroyed." Admiral Singh fought down a surge of anger. She had faced down pirates and warlords, but never a threat of this magnitude. The Draconian spoke of conquest as if it were already fact. "I'm afraid I cannot comply, High Lord," Singh said firmly. "We are a sovereign nation. Any act of aggression will be met with the full might of our military. I suggest you withdraw." Xeric hissed, baring rows of serrated teeth. "Insolent primate. You dare defy the Emperor's will. 100 worlds have fallen before us. Yours will be no different." The screen went dark. Alarms blared as the Imperial ships surged forward, disgorging swarms of fighters and attack craft. The home fleet moved to intercept, their shields flaring as they absorbed the first salvo of enemy fire. Admiral Singh gripped the arms of her command chair. "All ships, engage at will. We will not let them reach Earth." And so began the first battle of what would become known as the Human Imperial War. Earth's defenders fought bravely, but they were outmatched by the sheer size and firepower of the Imperial Armada. One by one, human ships fell in flames, reduced to clouds of molten debris. After 6 hours of desperate fighting, Admiral Singh ordered a retreat. The remnants of the home fleet limped back to Earth, their hulls scorched and battered. The Imperial ships did not pursue, content to let their broken foes flee. In the halls of power on Earth, grim-faced leaders watched the reports coming in, each more dire than the last. The Galactic Empire was a behemoth, a tyrannical regime that spanned 1,000 star systems. Its armies of gene-forged warriors and planet-crushing warships had conquered entire civilizations. Against such a foe, what hope did humanity have? But even in that darkest hour, they did not despair. The people of Earth had united before in the face of crisis. They would do so again. The greatest scientific minds were summoned, tasked with unlocking new technologies to even the odds. The mightiest fleets were marshaled, crewed by men and women ready to lay down their lives in defense of their homes. In secret shipyards and underground bunkers, new weapons of war took shape, soldiers trained in cutting-edge exoskeletons and power armor. Engineers worked feverishly to improve Earth's defensive grids and early warning systems. Diplomats reached out to alien allies, seeking aid against the common threat. Humanity would not go quietly into the night. If the Galactic Empire wanted Earth, they would have to pry it from humanity's cold, dead hands. The first battle had been lost, but the war was just beginning. In the face of annihilation, mankind would stand together. and fight. In the aftermath of the Galactic Empire's devastating first strike, the people of Earth knew they faced a fight for survival. The enemy had shown its crushing superiority in every way, in numbers, firepower, and sheer ruthlessness. If humanity was to have any hope, it needed to adapt, and quickly. The United Earth Federation poured all its resources into a desperate arms race. The brightest scientists and engineers were recruited from every nation, given unlimited funding and the mandate to push the boundaries of human technology. In hidden bases and black site labs, breakthroughs that would have taken decades were achieved in months. The most promising was Project Titan, led by the brilliant Dr. Elia Misser. Her team worked tirelessly to unlock the secrets of the Empire's advanced technology. Reverse engineering captured samples to create new weapons for Earth's defenders. The first fruits of their labors were the Titan-class combat exoskeletons, towering suits of powered armor equipped with devastating weapons and near-impenetrable shielding. In the shipyards of Luna and Mars, the Federation Navy retrofitted its warships with the latest in stealth technology and directed energy weapons. New classes of vessels were rushed into production. Sleek, heavily armed frigates designed for hit-and-run attacks, and massive carriers capable of launching swarms of AI-controlled fighter drones. But the Federation knew that hardware alone would not be enough. To defeat the Empire, they needed allies. Diplomats were sent to every corner of known space, seeking out other species who had suffered under the Empire's boot. Many were reluctant at first, too beaten down by generations of oppression to believe that resistance was possible. But as word of humanity's defiance spread, a spark of hope ignited. The Krill, the Voss, the Pelagzeni, one by one, they pledged their support, forming a tenuous alliance against the common foe. On the home front, Earth's leaders faced the daunting task of preparing their people for what was to come. The truth could no longer be hidden. The very existence of humanity was at stake. In a somber address broadcast across the globe, President Aidan Connors laid out the scale of the threat and called for unity in the face of adversity. "My fellow humans," he said, his voice heavy with the weight of his office, "we stand at a crossroads in our history. A great evil has set its sights on our world, an enemy that seeks nothing less than our total subjugation or destruction. The road ahead will be long and hard, and the cost will be high. But I know that we will rise to this challenge as we always have, with courage, determination, and an unbreakable spirit. Together, we will show the Galactic Empire what it means to face the united will of Earth." His words struck a chord. Across the planet, people from all walks of life stepped forward to do their part. Young men and women flocked to recruitment centers, eager to defend their homes and families. In factories and workshops, civilians worked around the clock to churn out the weapons of war. A sense of shared purpose and resolve settled over humanity, a grim determination to survive no matter the odds. But even as Earth girded itself for the fight to come, the Galactic Empire was not idle. On the imperial throne world of Draconis Prime, the Emperor seethed with rage at the upstart humans who had dared to defy him. He ordered his fleets to muster for a second assault, one that would crush the human resistance once and for all. And in the shadows, imperial spies and saboteurs were already at work, infiltrating human society and gathering intelligence for the coming invasion. They moved among the unsuspecting populace like vipers in the grass, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The stage was set for a confrontation that would shake the galaxy. Humanity, once a young, naive species taking its first steps into the stars, now found itself locked in a life-or-death struggle against a galactic superpower. It was a fight they had not sought, but one they knew they must win, for the alternative was too terrible to contemplate. The Galactic Empire's attack came without warning. One moment, the skies over Earth were clear and peaceful. The next, they were filled with the menacing shapes of Imperial warships, descending from orbit like avenging angels. The first target was the city of New York, the beating heart of the United Earth Federation. Swarms of fighters and bombers swooped down from the clouds, raining destruction on the sprawling metropolis. Skyscrapers toppled like dominoes, consumed by flames and debris. Screams of terror mixed with the deafening roar of explosions as millions fled for their lives. The Federation's defenders scrambled to respond, but they were woefully outmatched. The Empire's ships shrugged off their weapons' fire like raindrops, their shields barely flickering. In the streets below, Imperial ground troops marched in perfect formation, their gleaming battle armor a stark contrast to the rubble and ruin around them. They fired with ruthless precision, cutting down anyone foolish enough to stand in their way. At the forefront of the assault was High Lord Xerac, his draconian bulk encased in a towering exoskeleton bristling with weapons. He strode through the chaos like a god of war, his eyes alight with cruel satisfaction. This was what he lived for, the thrill of conquest, the rush of grinding lesser species beneath his heel. But the humans would not go down easily. As the Empire's forces penetrated deeper into the city, they met pockets of fierce resistance. Federation soldiers and local militias fought back with everything they had, turning streets and buildings into deadly kill zones. They knew they were outgunned, but they were fighting for their homes, their families, their very way of life. Among the defenders was Sergeant Lena Romero, a veteran of the Federation Marines. She led her squad through the shattered streets, their Titan exoskeletons giving them a fighting chance against the Imperial onslaught. With grim determination, they set up ambushes and choke points, making the invaders pay for every inch of ground. But for every Imperial soldier they felled, a dozen more took their place. The Empire's forces seemed endless, an inexhaustible tide of death and destruction. Slowly but surely, they pushed the defenders back, taking block after block in bloody close-quarters combat. As the sun set on the first day of the invasion, New York lay in ruins. Iconic landmarks like the Statue of Liberty and the Empire State Building were reduced to smoldering wrecks. The streets were choked with the bodies of the dead and the debris of shattered lives. And still the Imperial advance continued, relentless and implacable. Across the globe, the story was the same. The Empire struck at major cities and military installations with overwhelming force, catching the defenders off guard and unprepared. In Paris, in Beijing, in Moscow, the pattern repeated: shock, destruction, desperate resistance, and eventual defeat. The casualty reports made for grim reading. In the space of a single day, the United Earth Federation had lost millions of lives and a significant chunk of its military strength. Its fleets lay in ruins, its armies scattered and demoralized. For the first time in generations, humanity tasted the bitter ashes of defeat. But even in the darkest hour, there were glimmers of hope. Stories of heroism and sacrifice spread like wildfire, tales of ordinary people rising to extraordinary heights in defense of their world. And in the hidden labs and bases of the resistance, the seeds of a counterattack were already being sown. For the Empire, the first strike had been a resounding success. They had proven their might beyond any doubt, crushing the human upstarts with contemptuous ease. But they had also awakened a sleeping giant, a species that would not bow down or submit. The humans had taken the Empire's best shot, and they were still standing. The Galactic Empire had won the battle, but the war was far from over. And as the dust settled on the ravaged cities of Earth, a single thought echoed in the minds of every survivor, from the lowliest civilian to the highest leader. This was only the beginning. In the wake of the Empire's devastating first strike, the United Earth Federation knew that it needed more than just military might to turn the tide. They needed information, the kind that could only be obtained through covert means. And so, even as the ruins of Earth's cities still smoldered, a new front in the war began, the shadow war of espionage and infiltration. Leading the charge was the enigmatic figure known only as the Ghost, a master of disguise and infiltration. The Ghost had been instrumental in building humanity's intelligence network in the years leading up to the invasion. Now, he turned his skills to the task of penetrating the Empire's defenses and uncovering its secrets. His first target was the Imperial garrison on the moon of Europa. Using a stolen Imperial shuttle and forged identification, the Ghost and his team slipped past the base's security checks and made their way inside. Once there, they split up, each agent tasked with a specific objective. The Ghost's mission was to hack into the base's central computer and download any information that could be useful to the Resistance. As he made his way through the labyrinthine corridors, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The base seemed too quiet, the security too lax. It was as if the Imperials were inviting him in. His suspicions were confirmed when he reached the computer core. There, waiting for him, was High Lord Xerek himself, flanked by a squad of elite Draconian guards. The Ghost realized with a sinking feeling that he had been betrayed. Someone on his team was a double agent, working for the Empire all along. What followed was a desperate fight for survival. The Ghost was outnumbered and outgunned, but he was far from helpless. With lightning speed, he drew his plasma pistol and dove for cover, taking out two of the guards before they could react. The room erupted into a storm of blaster fire, the stench of ozone mixing with the coppery tang of blood. But even the Ghost's legendary skills were not enough. One by one, his team members fell, cut down by the Imperial onslaught. And then, Xerek was on him, the Draconian's massive form looming over him like a nightmare given flesh. The Ghost fought with every ounce of strength and cunning he possessed, but it was no use. The High Lord was too strong, too fast. With a final, crushing blow, the Ghost fell, his body broken and bleeding. As he lay there, his life ebbing away, the Ghost locked eyes with his betrayer. It was his second in command, a man he had trusted with his life. The traitor looked back at him with a mixture of pity and contempt. "Why?" The Ghost whispered, his voice thick with pain and betrayal. The traitor shrugged. "The Empire offered me a better deal. It's nothing personal." With that, he turned and walked away, leaving the Ghost to his fate. The last thing the Ghost saw before the darkness claimed him was the triumphant smile on Xerek's reptilian face. News of the Ghost's defeat spread like wildfire through the Resistance. For many, it was a crushing blow, a sign that even their greatest heroes were no match for the Empire's might. But for others, it was a call to arms, a reminder of what they were fighting for. In the days that followed, the Shadow War intensified. New agents stepped up to take the Ghost's place, each one driven by a burning desire for vengeance. They struck at Imperial targets with a ferocity born of desperation, using every trick in the book to even the odds. And slowly but surely, their efforts began to pay off. Bit by bit, they pieced together a picture of the Empire's plans and weaknesses, a treasure trove of intelligence that could turn the tide of the war. The cost was high. For every agent who succeeded, a dozen more were captured or killed. But they pressed on, driven by the knowledge that they were humanity's last, best hope. The Empire may have won the first round, but the game was far from over. In the shadows and the back alleys, the Resistance was growing, a network of spies and saboteurs united by a common cause. And though they had lost the Ghost, his legacy lived on, a legacy of courage, sacrifice, and an unbreakable will to fight for freedom, no matter the odds. The United Earth Federation was on the brink of collapse. Despite the bravery and sacrifice of its soldiers and spies, the Galactic Empire's onslaught seemed unstoppable. World after world fell to the invaders, the once proud human colonies reduced to ashes and rubble. It was becoming clear that humanity could not win this war alone. In desperation, the Federation's leaders turned to a strategy they had once considered unthinkable, seeking aid from the other species of the galaxy. For centuries, humanity had stood apart, too proud and too wary to forge close ties with the alien civilizations they had encountered. But now, faced with annihilation, they had no choice. The first to answer the call were the Krill, a fierce warrior race known for their honor and combat prowess. Like humanity, they had suffered under the Empire's boot, their homeworld subjected to a brutal occupation. When the Federation's ambassadors arrived, They found a people eager for vengeance, ready to fight and die for a chance to strike back at their oppressors. Next came the Voss, a technologically advanced species whose mastery of quantum mechanics and nanoengineering was unmatched. They had long been neutral in the galactic conflict, content to watch from the sidelines. But as the Empire's shadow grew ever longer, they realized that isolation was no longer an option. If the Draconians were not stopped, it would only be a matter of time before their own worlds were threatened. The final piece of the puzzle was the Pelagzani, a reclusive species rarely seen beyond the borders of their own star system. Masters of the psychic arts, they had the power to manipulate minds and emotions, to sow confusion and fear in the ranks of their enemies. For generations they had hidden away, fearing the attention of the wider galaxy. But now, with the fate of all life hanging in the balance, they knew they could no longer stand idly by. Together, these unlikely allies formed a coalition, a united front against the Galactic Empire. It was an alliance born of desperation and necessity, but it gave humanity a glimmer of hope. With the Krill's warriors, the Voss technology, and the Pelagzani's psychic might, they finally had a chance to turn the tide. The first test of the new alliance came in the skies above the planet Sapphirus. There, a massive Imperial fleet was gathering, preparing for a final assault on the heart of human space. If they succeeded, it would be the end of the United Earth Federation, and with it, any hope of resistance. But the Allies were ready. As the Imperial ships closed in, they were met by a wall of fire, a combined assault from the armies of 4 species. Human and Krill fighters swarmed the enemy fleet, darting in and out of the fray with reckless courage. Voss drones and nanite swarms wreaked havoc on the Imperial ship systems, turning their own technology against them. And in the midst of it all, the Pelagzani wove their psychic webs, sowing confusion and terror in the minds of the Draconian warriors. It was a battle unlike any the galaxy had ever seen, a desperate struggle against impossible odds. Ships exploded in bursts of flame, their crews consumed by the unforgiving void of space. Warriors clashed in brutal hand-to-hand combat, their blood mingling on the decks of shattered vessels. And through it all, the Allies fought on, driven by a shared determination to survive, to protect their homes and their loved ones. In the end, against all odds, they emerged victorious. The Imperial fleet was shattered, its remnants fleeing back to the safety of their own space. The Allies had won their first major victory, and with it, a new sense of hope and purpose. But even as they celebrated, they knew that the war was far from over. The Galactic Empire was still out there, still vastly superior in numbers and firepower. And they would not take this defeat lightly. They would come back harder, more ruthless than ever before. But for now, the Allies had bought themselves some time. Time to regroup, to plan, to prepare for the battles to come. And as they looked to the stars, they knew that they were no longer alone. They had each other, a bond forged in the crucible of war. And together, they would stand against the darkness, no matter what the future might bring. In the wake of their victory at Sapphirus, the Allied forces knew they had to press their advantage. The Galactic Empire was wounded, but far from defeated. If they were to have any chance of winning this war, they needed to strike fast and hard before the enemy could regroup and retaliate. But first, they needed to send a message, a warning to the Empire that the days of human subjugation were over, that Earth and its allies would no longer bow down to tyranny and oppression. And so, in a daring move, the leaders of the United Earth Federation, the Krill, the Voss, and the Pelagzani came together to issue an ultimatum. The message was broadcast on every frequency, transmitted to every corner of the galaxy. It showed the 4 leaders standing side by side, their faces grim with determination. To the Emperor and the people of the Galactic Empire, began President Aiden Connors of the United Earth Federation. For too long, you have preyed upon the weak and the innocent, subjugating countless worlds in your quest for power. But no more. Your reign of terror ends now, continued the Krill chieftain. his voice a low growl. "We, the free peoples of the galaxy, will no longer tolerate your aggression, your cruelty, your disregard for the sanctity of life." The Voss representative spoke next, her words calm and measured. "We possess technologies beyond your understanding, weapons that could reduce your empire to ashes in an instant. But we do not seek destruction, only peace and justice." Finally, the Pelagzani elder stepped forward, his eyes glowing with psychic energy. "Heed our warning, Emperor. Withdraw your forces from our space. Dismantle your war machine, and we may yet show mercy. Refuse, and face the consequences." The transmission ended, leaving a stunned galaxy in its wake. Never before had anyone dared to defy the Galactic Empire so openly, so brazenly. In the halls of power on Draconis Prime, the Emperor seethed with rage, his advisors cowering before him. "How dare they?" he bellowed, his voice shaking the very walls. "These insignificant insects, these primitives, dare to threaten me. I will crush them like the vermin they are." But even as he raged, a flicker of doubt crept into his mind. The Allies had proven themselves formidable foes, their victory at Zephyrus a stinging blow to Imperial pride. And their warning spoke of weapons, technologies unknown. Could there be some truth to their claims? He shook off the thought, his eyes narrowing with cold determination. He was the Emperor of the Galactic Empire, the supreme ruler of 1,000 worlds. He would not be cowed by the threats of lesser beings. "Summon the fleets," he commanded. "Muster every ship, every soldier. We will unleash the full might of the Empire upon these upstarts, and they will learn the price of defiance." As word of the Emperor's decree spread, the galaxy held its breath. The stage was set for a confrontation unlike any before, a clash of civilizations that would determine the fate of billions. On one side, the vast legions of the Galactic Empire, an unstoppable force driven by conquest and domination. On the other, an unlikely alliance of humans and aliens, united by a common goal: freedom. In the heart of the United Earth Federation, a sense of grim determination settled over the people. They had suffered much in this war: the loss of loved ones, the destruction of their cities, the shattered remnants of their once proud civilization. But they had also discovered a strength they never knew they possessed, a resilience forged in the fires of adversity. And so, as the fleets of the Empire marshaled for their final assault, the humans and their allies prepared for the fight of their lives. They knew the odds were against them, knew that victory would come at a terrible cost. But they also knew that some things were worth fighting for, worth dying for. Their warning had been delivered, their defiance proclaimed for all the galaxy to hear. Now all that remained was to see it through, to the bitter end. For in the face of annihilation, they had found something worth more than their own lives: the hope of a better tomorrow, a future free from the shadow of tyranny. The final battle was coming, and the fate of the galaxy hung in the balance. The Galactic Empire's response to the Allies' ultimatum was swift and brutal. Within hours of the transmission, Imperial ships began pouring into the solar system, their numbers blotting out the stars. It was an armada unlike any the galaxy had ever seen, a vast assembly of warships and fighters, each one bristling with weapons capable of leveling entire cities. At the head of the fleet was the Emperor's personal flagship, a behemoth of a vessel that dwarfed even the mightiest of the Allied ships. Its very presence seemed to radiate malice, a palpable aura of dread that sent shivers down the spines of even the bravest defenders. As the Imperial forces closed in on Earth, the Allies scrambled to mount a defense. The skies above the planet became a maelstrom of fire and fury, as human and alien ships clashed in a desperate battle for survival. The Krill fighters swept through the enemy ranks like avenging angels, their plasma cannons blazing with righteous fury. The Voss drones swarmed the Imperial ships, hacking their systems and turning their own weapons against them. And the Pelagzani wove their psychic webs, sowing chaos and confusion in the minds of the enemy. But for all their bravery and skill, the Allies were vastly outnumbered. The Empire's ships seemed to stretch to the very horizon, an endless tide of metal and death. And at their center, the Emperor's flagship loomed like a colossus, its shields shrugging off even the most powerful of attacks. On the bridge of the flagship, the Emperor himself watched the battle unfold, a cruel smile playing across his reptilian features. He had waited long for this moment, the chance to crush the human upstarts once and for all. And now, with victory within his grasp, he savored every moment of their destruction. But even as the battle raged, a small group of human and alien soldiers were embarking on a desperate mission. Led by the legendary warrior known as the Ghost, they had infiltrated the Emperor's flagship, determined to strike at the very heart of the Empire. They knew it was a suicide mission, that their chances of survival were slim to none. But they also knew that it was their only hope, the only way to end the war once and for all. As they made their way through the labyrinthine corridors of the ship, they faced resistance at every turn. Imperial guards and battle droids swarmed them from all sides, their blasters filling the air with searing bolts of energy. But the infiltrators fought on, driven by a grim determination to see their mission through to the end. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity of fighting, they'd reached the ship's reactor core. It was a vast chamber, pulsing with an eerie green light, the heart of the Emperor's power. And there, waiting for them, was the Emperor himself, flanked by his elite guard. What followed was a battle for the ages. The Ghost and his team fought with a ferocity born of desperation, their weapons flashing in the dim light. The Emperor, for his part, seemed to revel in the carnage, his own blade cutting through the air with blinding speed. In the end, it was the Ghost who struck the final blow. With a cry of defiance, he lunged at the Emperor, his sword piercing the tyrant's black heart. The Emperor let out a gasping cry, his eyes widening in shock and disbelief. And then he fell, his body crumpling to the floor like a puppet with its strings cut. But even as the Emperor died, the battle outside raged on. The Imperial ships, suddenly leaderless, fell into disarray, their formations breaking apart like shattered glass. The Allies, sensing victory, pressed their attack, pouring all their remaining strength into one final push. And then, just when all seemed lost, a miracle happened. The Emperor's flagship, its reactor core critically damaged by the infiltrators' attack, erupted in a blinding flash of light. The explosion tore through the Imperial ranks like a tidal wave, consuming ships and soldiers alike in a maelstrom of fire and debris. When the smoke cleared, the Imperial fleet was in ruins. Ships lay shattered and broken, drifting aimlessly through the void. And in the midst of it all, the Allied forces stood triumphant, their faces alight with the joy of hard-won victory. The war was over. The Galactic Empire, once thought invincible, lay broken and defeated. And the galaxy, for the first time in centuries, was free. But even as they celebrated, the survivors knew that their work was not yet done. The Empire may have been defeated, but its legacy would linger, a shadow that would take generations to fully dispel. And there would be other threats, other tyrants seeking to fill the void left by the Emperor's fall. But for now, in this moment of triumph, none of that mattered. They had fought, and they had won. And in the end, that was all that mattered. In the aftermath of the Emperor's defeat, a strange calm settled over the galaxy. The Allied forces, exhausted from their long and bitter struggle, slowly began the process of rebuilding. Planets that had been ravaged by the Empire's onslaught were gradually restored, their cities rising from the ashes like phoenixes reborn. But even as they worked to heal the scars of war, a sense of unease lingered in the air. The Galactic Empire may have been vanquished, but its legacy remained, a dark shadow that threatened to engulf the fragile peace they had fought so hard to achieve. Nowhere was this sense of foreboding more acute than on Earth itself. The humans, once the driving force behind the Alliance, now found themselves adrift, their sense of purpose lost in the void left by the Empire's fall. Many began to question whether the cost of victory had been too high, whether the sacrifices they had made had been worth it in the end. It was in this moment of uncertainty that a new leader emerged, a visionary who saw a path forward for humanity, a way to ensure that the horrors of the past would never be repeated. Her name was Dr. Elia Nuzzer, and she was the head of the United Earth Federation's most secret and ambitious project yet. For years, Dr. Nuzzer and her team had been working on a weapon of unimaginable power, a device that harnessed the very fabric of space and time itself. They called it the Singularity Engine, and it was humanity's last, desperate gambit in the war against the Empire. But the engine was more than just a weapon. It was a tool of creation, a means to reshape the very foundations of the universe. With it, Dr. Nuzzer believed they could create a new reality, one in which the Galactic Empire had never existed, where the countless lives lost in the war could be restored. It was a daring plan, one fraught with risk and uncertainty. Many opposed it, arguing that the consequences of tampering with the very nature of existence were too grave to contemplate. But Dr. Nuzzer was undeterred. She knew that this was humanity's only hope, their last chance to build a better future. And so, with the fate of the galaxy hanging in the balance, the Singularity Engine was activated. The air thrummed with an otherworldly energy as the device sprang to life, its mechanisms whirring and clicking with a strange, hypnotic rhythm. At first, nothing seemed to happen. The Allied leaders, gathered to witness the momentous event, held their breath in anticipation, their eyes fixed on the pulsing heart of the engine. And then, with a blinding flash of light, everything changed. Reality itself seemed to warp and twist, the very fabric of space and time bending to the will of the Singularity Engine. The Allied fleet, the shattered remnants of the Empire, the countless worlds scared by the ravages of war, all of it was swept away in an instant, replaced by a new and unfamiliar landscape. When the light faded, the survivors found themselves in a galaxy transformed. The Galactic Empire was gone, its very existence erased from the annals of history. In its place stood a new order, one founded on the principles of peace, justice, and unity. It was a brave new world, one filled with hope and possibility. The Allies, once bound together by the shared threat of the Empire, now found themselves united by a common vision, a dream of a galaxy where all beings could live in harmony, free from the specter of war and oppression. As the news of the Singularity Engine's success spread, a sense of joy and celebration swept across the stars. Planets that had once been bitter enemies now embraced each other as brothers and sisters, their differences forgotten in the face of this new and wondrous reality. And at the center of it all stood Dr. Nuzzer and her team, the architects of this grand new future. They knew that the road ahead would not be easy, that there would be challenges and obstacles to overcome. But they also knew that they had been given a second chance, a chance to build a better galaxy, one shaped by the ideals of compassion, understanding, and hope. As the celebrations continued, the survivors of the war looked to the stars, their eyes alight with the promise of a brighter tomorrow. They had fought the darkness and emerged victorious, their spirits forged in the crucible of war. And now, with the power of the Singularity Engine at their disposal, they knew that anything was possible. The Galactic Empire was gone, but the story of humanity was just beginning. And as they stood on the threshold of this new and uncharted future, they knew that the best was yet to come.